Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode. You're here with the Truth in Trucking team, and today we got a very special guest, very special episode here. We have Rolando Palma, we call him Roly, with S1 Security Group, and we also got our other host here, my partner in crime,
Harold with Untouchable Insurance.
All right, so we're going to kick this off today. It's a great episode. It's about trailer theft, how it affects the trucking industry, insurance, and we got an expert here who is Rolando Palma, and I'm going to let him kind of give himself an introduction of who he is, how he got into this, what his company does.
Yeah, how are you doing? Good morning. My name is Rolando Palma. I've been doing this about 25 years. I started as a Marine, then I went to work for the FAA in the cargo area. After that, I went to a private sector. I went to transportation about 2003, and I worked in the safety and the security department for a trucking company, recovering freight and stuff. Then I went and I opened my own company about 20 years ago, and we started doing cargo theft. We only specialize in cargo theft and cargo security. So we do all the cargo escorts, we do all the cargo security for different trucking companies, and we do all the investigations for major trucking companies. I also own a company called MIS, which is Marine Intelligence Solutions, which that's the investigation part of S1. That company, 99% of them are former law enforcement. They do all cargo theft investigations. So we have the number 2 guy that retired from the FBI, does cargo theft. We have Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, NYPD, DEA. Wow. So we have a lot of big resumes there. And our job is to recover freight and put it back in the supply chain so the customer, the carrier, doesn't have a loss in their loss ratio.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah, nice. And is that every state? Or you're not?
No, we're licensed. Well, we do nationwide. We currently are licensed in Florida, Tennessee, Texas, Illinois, and California.
Wow. Okay.
So all the major theft states
major
as well.
boards and stuff like that. Got it.
Okay, great. So do you mind if we talk about the different type of thefts that you see in the industry? I know there's different types of names for certain types. Right. What are those?
Well, you have your strategic cargo theft, which is what's happening now. And we'll go back to that. We always like to start with your straight theft. Straight theft is the normal driver that goes to a truck stop, claims that the truck was stolen and trailer. We investigate. Those are the easy ones. Those are the boots on the ground real quick. I hate to say that it's usually internal theft.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say that. Usually I've seen those before.
Yeah. It's usually the internal theft issues. Then you have your number 2 that doesn't really happen, which is your hijacking. Doesn't really happen in the United States.
Yeah,
those are cool.
Yeah,
more movies and stuff. It doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
As Harold knows, that he's in the insurance business. Yep. If it doesn't have unattended coverage, it's not covered. So it's not really hijacked. So that really, in my 25-year career, I've only seen one, and obviously was an internal job. He tied himself up.
Yep.
The most common now we have, which is 90% of all the thefts are happening now in the United States, is your strategic thefts, fictitious pickups.
Wow, great. That's awesome. Yeah, I kind of figured. So is that tied into the strategic cargo theft? Is that tied into what is called like double brokering and things like that? Does that stem from that? Is that where it's coming from?
The word double brokering comes more from a broker getting it or a carrier and giving it to another broker without authorization. So that's a double broker. Strategic theft, we call it that way because there's different ways of doing it.
Okay.
So it means that, let's say Harold has a carrier, and Harold goes into a load board and he finds a load. He already knows that from Coppell, Texas to Florida is usually copper. So he already knows what it is. He knows based on the area, and he'll call a major broker and say, look, I'm interested in the load and I want it. And he'll send false paperwork to that broker that's really not his. And now he hires you that has nothing to do and says, look, we got a load, and now he brokers it. He double brokers it, or he has or his company or his crew picks it up. There's 2 ways. He hires someone, or he actually does it himself. They steal the load. Very easy. No traceability most of the time.
Wow.
The trailer doesn't have a GPS. You can't really follow much, but that's the common one now.
Wow. So with the thefts that's been going on, what is the most popular commodity now? Is it food? Is it electronics?
It fluctuates. Currently now, I will tell you everything. It's probably the worst I've ever seen in 25 years in my career. 2020 it was actually household goods and food due to the fact of COVID.
Yeah,
so
that's
that
right.
changed
Wow,
things.
that's crazy.
So a trailer full of Lysol, which was really not much money, it was liquid gold.
Or the toilet paper,
or hand sanitizer,
diapers.
So you had trailers that were $50,000, $60,000 now. You know, in the black market, they're going for
Wow, that's crazy. You never think
No,
of that.
but that's whatever it is that's in need at that time
Exactly.
becomes the item.
Wow.
That's
right.
up
Printers were everybody was working from home,
Yeah,
so
home
you
printer,
wanted to buy
yeah.
printers, you wanted to buy electronics. We still get major one is always electronics, even though they got a little bit. And the deal with electronics is it usually happens in California because it comes from overseas.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they'll get the electronics and they try to ship them to another third world country due to the fact that nowadays you turn on the TV, you have to register. It's they're a little scared about that. So electronics is still number one.
Okay.
Household goods always there.
what about alcohol? And
Alcohol, I'll tell you, there's been a decrease in alcohol. Usually in Texas, it does pick up because all the loads from Laredo going.
Yeah.
So, but in South Florida, remember, we ship all the stuff that goes in the cruise ships out of Florida. So all these, but we haven't seen that major issue. We'll lose a load, but not as money as and copper. Obviously, copper is very, very Copper, anything that has to be copper, you would never recover. The likelihood of you recovering that load is 5%. By the time they
is
steal
that
it,
because they're melting it down?
they smelt it immediately.
Wow. But is that happening here, or are they shipping that somewhere else?
No, it's usually they know where the distribution is, so they'll pick it up in Texas and they'll do it around there. Chicago is Illinois is a big deal with copper.
Wow.
And it's demographics. What crew works what area,
Wow. And not traceable. You can't. That's it.
By the time they smelt it, it's gone.
Wow, man, that's crazy.
Didn't learn that. Something new I knew.
So what are I'm sorry. Is there any questions you want to ask Rolando, Harold?
I want to get back into the double brokering a little bit.
Sure.
Okay.
And I want you to really, I think our audience is more prone we have. It's probably more prone to the double brokering situation where I've seen
it's a lot of talk about
a lot
it.
of that.
Fraud and
Strategic
stuff.
is another thing, like you said. I mean, it works. You got two major things there, and those are the things I really think we should really focus on. And I'd like to sit there and talk about double brokering and how we can avoid it, what to do, those kind of things. And I think that's what we need to bring to the audience.
So my recommendation always to a broker is whenever you put the load up in the load board, mask the city that you're going to pick it up. Because these guys already know that we're talking about Florida, so let's talk about Medley. So if you put that the load goes from Medley to somewhere, South Carolina, they already know that the only, there's a couple factors in Medley, but from that location, it's usually a company that makes manhole covers.
Right.
Just putting an example, just so you know. So they already know that if they want to steal that, that's where it's going to be.
Right.
So I would mask it. Just put Miami, and that's it. When you vet your carrier, which he calls and make sure it's fine, and the issue that we're having, and the brokers it's a supply and demand issue. It's economics, right? So what happens is that most of the time when they go ahead and they call in, they have one truck or two truck type of deal, and the economics are there. So the broker needs to move the load. So they'll go ahead and take advantage, and they'll say, okay, we need to move it. Let's give it to this guy, which he doesn't have. The safer is not correct. When we go into safer, they have to check the safer. If they have one truck, a truck has to give you over 100,000 miles. What's happening is there's a lot of these carriers are saying they're carriers, and they're buying these companies from car carriers or hot pops, and they go ahead and they just move that, and now they say, you look at the safer and the truck has only done 8,000 miles in a whole year. There's a problem. There's a red flag. One truck should give you 100,000. Obviously not everybody has access to a cab report because you're running. That that's not a tractor trailer. It's a trailer.
Right.
So they don't have all the tools, but you gotta vet the driver. You have to get who the driver is. And what happens is brokers don't have the authority of running the driver because they're not licensed investigators. So that's why when they give a very expensive load, they usually contact us for us to vet the carriers because they only can vet the safer, they can vet maybe the cab report, but they can't do anything else. So they don't know if that's a real driver or not. So we got to find out what the driver is. And we've been called, we usually do all these high-end value loads. So let's say it's a $10 million load. We're going to vet the driver. We're going to make sure where he lives. We're going to do this. When he picks up, it's the same thing when you apply for a credit card. The shipper, if he's really in tune with his load, we'll tell the shipper, ask these 3 questions. When was the last time you lived? What color is your car? We know that because we run his background. We know exactly who he is and what he does. But what happens is the shippers are the guardian of the galaxy, like I said, and they're not really protected. They're not looking at the signs. These guys are coming in there to pick up a load with tape on their doors with
a
Harold
sign.
Express. And like,
With a cardboard.
yeah, but we gave a load to Michael. Why Harold? Oh, well, that's the way it is. And they're not doing their job. They don't care. They're not putting the seal. They're not checking. And that's why we're getting so impacted in this economy with this trucking because they're not doing their due diligence.
Yeah, you know,
No.
I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm
On
sorry.
the insurance side of things, you know, usually the broker is requesting $100,000 worth of coverage.
Right.
So are you finding these loads are a lot more than that $100,000 in that, or is it?
I would say, Harold, that I've seen 60% of the loads are really not worth what they're asking for the 100. You know, they're praying that it doesn't get stolen. And if it does get stolen, they'll try to get the carrier for the whole amount. And you've seen it, you're in the insurance business. They'll
Right.
try to go after the whole amount. And the guys will say, oh, you have $100, you have $100,000 certificate. Why did you give me that load if I wasn't insured?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. They'll go after it. The issue is that they're giving it and they're doing it because of purpose. It's the same thing as if you were the carrier and you carry 300,000, you amass that extra 200 just in case there's an issue because they're not paying you extra to carry 200 grand. So an extra 200, so you give them that 100. It's just the same thing as the broker. The broker doesn't want to put that the load is $500,000 and say, well, you know, we need a team. You know, we need security. It's going to be GPS because you say that. What did you tell the bad guy? This is the load you want to steal.
Pretty much,
Right.
yeah.
That's what you wanted. So they don't do that. It's like back in the days, the myth was that you get a trailer and you put a bunch of all these safety, security seals on it. When the guy sees that, says, well, everybody puts a bolt seal. This has a cable seal, it has a bolt seal. This load I'm interested in. This is the one I'm going to steal.
Right.
So that's what you're doing. So it's
No, I
indications.
Gotcha. So basically, my biggest concern with with the people, my insureds, is sometimes I think they're underinsured for what they're carrying.
Of course.
Right. And if you're saying, because I know the brokers usually have matching coverage.
Right.
Or like a supplement.
A
type.
contingent cargo type of deal.
Contingent,
Cover.
Cargo, yes. So, you know, sometimes it's a problem, sometimes it isn't. I mean, you know, you look at a big piece of equipment. I mean, I'm not an excavator, but no one's going to steal an excavator. It's going to be kind of hard to do that. You know what I'm saying? But that excavator costs more than $250,000.
Yeah.
I'll
And
tell
that's
you, if you go to Publix now and you go shop around, everything's expensive. Milk is expensive. So that truckload that used to be worth $40,000 is now worth $100. Look at the eggs.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you about the eggs.
Yeah, so the eggs is like now a trailer full of low, you know, retail or wholesale value is like $50,000. That's wholesale. But in reality, it's like the stock market. How many eggs do you get? Supply and demand.
Oh, yeah.
Back to the same thing. So
That's right. We had an egg issue.
we
that's
have an
all.
issue. So back again to your question is, I was always suggest that the carrier carries $250,000 just to be in the safe side.
Yeah.
If he wants to put 100 in the certificate and leave the other 150 in case of emergency, that's what I would do because obviously they're going to take advantage. Because you know that if they have a certificate for 250, they're going to claim the whole 250. So I will always put 100, and then if the customer requires it, then you give them the certificate at 250. That is key. The other thing is, you know, the vetting is very, very key. And if the brokers don't do it, they're gonna get hurt because also the contingent cargo. So let's say that your carrier is a fictitious carrier, or it's a strategic, you know, fictitious, no good carrier. Now they go ahead and then put a claim, but you didn't do your due diligence. You really didn't know it was a fictitious carrier. So now your contingent cargo has to pay, and your contingent cargo is gonna hire an investigation company like ours and say, what happened here? What's the mistake?
Is there something like, let's say in reverse, there's a fictitious broker?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So when the we call it strategic theft due to the fact because it's different ways. So the way it works is now that broker, okay, this is in California and it's not the big deal. They have third world countries. They have offices just like dispatchers. So they have dispatchers. They have an accounting team. They have dispatchers, and they run it different ways. So what they will do is they'll take a load from a big broker, and they'll take the load. Once they have it in their hand, either two choices. If they have a crew that actually could go pick it up for them, which is, you know, one of their crews, they'll send that, and then that crew will take it to a drop yard. And the way it works, I'm gonna give you a case scenario. So the broker gets hit by a fake broker, right? That fake broker gives it to a carrier that he controls, which is stolen carrier. Now that load gets picked up, and he takes it. But before he picks it up, you know, he'll take a trailer, right? So that's key. That when there's an issue, they have to report it immediately so we can see who picked it up and what trailer it is. Most of the time, they'll pick up a trailer that's in a drop yard or something they see in the street, like a Warner or anything like that. So if it's Warner or Amazon, we'll call them and get the GPS for that trailer, and we follow the breadcrumbs. That guy's gonna take it to they will take it to like a cross dock, and they'll leave it there. That cross dock, now when he leaves it there, let's say he picked up the trailer's 24 pallets of leather goods, and these are real cases, so we're using their leather goods. Now when he takes it into that drop yard or that cross dock, he'll call the yard and they'll say, you know what? We need, instead of 24, we need to fit an extra pallet. We need you to condense it to 23 pallets. And now we need you to do new bill lading, and the bill lading is going to say purses. So from there, he will get another driver. Now he brokers that load to another carrier, a real carrier, let's say him, and he'll pick it up and move it to another cross dock. And from there, they'll limit another pallet and change the bill of lading and then call it something else.
Oh, wow.
So what happens is if we don't know where the breadcrumbs are and the time that he did it, we can't find it, because now we call Harold's warehouse and Harold will say, I never got any purses. He's not going to offer and say, well, we got leather goods, because now you're changing the pallet count from 24 to 23. So if we don't have those breadcrumbs, it's very hard to get.
Wow.
And then they'll move it from drop yard to drop yard or cross dock to cross dock, and they'll clean the thing up till they ship it to wherever they're going to sell it. Okay, that's one way.
So this is like, to put it in plain English, it's like money laundering.
It's like bill lading laundry.
What they're doing is they're laundering.
Hey, we got to go. New name there.
We call it bill manipulation. So that's what they manipulate. So the other scenario is, which is very common, is now the bad broker takes a load from the broker. He'll call George and say, hey, George, we have a load for you. We need you to pick it up, and we need you to take the load and take it to his address. This is where you're going to take it. It's a blind shipment. So when you get there, you're picking it up from Miami. You're going to go to South Carolina. It's a blind shipment. Okay, no problem. George goes, picks up the load. He deals with these, regular people. They offer him X amount of money. They give him a rate confirmation sheet. He goes to the warehouse to pick up. He has nothing to hide. He gives his ID. He shows his face. He goes and picks up the trailer. Everything's fine. So now George gets a call from that broker, which is a scammer, and says, hey, George, you know what? We got some good news and some bad news for you. Okay, what's the good news? The good news is you're still going to get paid the same. But what's the bad news? Well, we need you to take that load because we found a driver that has to take that load somewhere else. So we need you to meet him in this hotel parking lot or a truck yard parking lot or a drop yard parking lot. And you're going to give that trailer to this gentleman who's going to pick up this load, and he's going to go somewhere else. Okay, I'm still going to get paid? Yeah. Obviously, he's going to get paid by Zelle. So, obviously, George is really happy because now he has a cash. He's like, hey, dude.
Cash in his
He's got cash. He's gone. So what happens is now George meets Harold, we'll use you again, and picks up the load and says, hey, George, why are you giving me this load? No, they told me to pick it up because I got to go somewhere else. Oh, okay, no problem. The only awkward, weird situation is it's in the middle of a hotel parking lot or somewhere, right? So now the load never gets delivered. We get contacted. What happened? So now we go back to the shipper. Oh, they gave it to George. George gave his ID. We called George. Hey, George, we're investigators. We're cargo theft investigators.
I left at the parking lot with Henry, and he took it.
Yeah. What happened? Why did you take this load? Why did you steal his load? Because obviously he's a suspect, or we clear him out. Well, I didn't steal it. Here's the bill of lading. I'm going to send you the bill of lading. Send me your credentials. We send the bill of lading. Okay, where did you drop it off? Well, I dropped it off at this parking lot. Who's the driver who picked it up? He'll give us a number. So we'll start tracking it down until we get it. But those are the two ways of you doing it.
Hold on, Roly. So let me jump in with it.
Yeah.
Are you guys using GPS and tracking at that point? Or is it like old school, let's go talk to this guy?
If George, if he's the first scenario, if they steal a trailer from Amazon and they steal it all the way, we can call Amazon. They'll give us the tracking for that. That's the easiest way.
Wow.
If George steals it, we're going to get the last location will be where he gave it to the other driver. Now we have to find the other driver, see where he left it off.
So let's say a driver finds himself in that position that you're in. Should he take pictures of the tags on the car, the vehicle? Is there a way to... Because it's...
But how's he going to know?
But it sounds shady already.
It is.
You know what I'm saying?
It is.
There's no bill of lading, right? It's blank, right?
Right.
That's what you're telling us, right? And I'm meeting you in the parking lot. Should the bells and whistles go off in your head?
That would be like driver education, right?
So we educate carriers, and because of this happening. If it's a real big carrier, they're not going to take any Zelle payment because it doesn't work. So they'll find it shady because if you don't send a load, it's going to be a problem. The other issue is, and we're getting back to your question, is very simple. Usually we find a lot of drivers are honest. They'll take it, they figure it's wrong, and when they say to take it to a hotel parking lot, they stop. They take it to a safe location, and they'll start contacting those shipper and see who it belongs to. At that time, we probably make contact with him and we'll figure it out. But they usually hold it, or they'll leave the trailer there 2 or 3 days because they find that it's kind of shady. And once we call him, we say, look, we've had cases. The guy who's from Miami, he's from California. He picked up the load in Georgia. He ends up in California. So worst case could happen is for the brokers, we got to pay all the miles that he did, and then we find someone that, we'll get that carrier so he can deliver it back. But there's a lot of honest people and common sense people. They know what's going on.
Rolly, real quick. So what happens when you recover it? Who benefits for that? Whoever called you, the insurance company, the shipper, the consignee?
So it all depends, who we work for. So usually we work for the carrier. We could work for the broker and the contingent part of it, or we could work for the insurance company. So it all depends. So we just recommend that we get called within 48 hours because the longer it takes, it's gone. Yeah. But usually, we have set agreements with carriers and contracts and carriers and brokers, so I immediately will get it. The brokers will take a little longer because they'll figure out that it's stolen, especially like on holidays. That's
when you get it recovered, though. Are you giving it just, hey guy, I found it, here you go? You give it to them, or
the way it works
process? You got to call the
no. The way it works is obviously the load is stolen, so it's usually an NICB, and the equipment and everything is loaded. It goes into CargoNet, which is a system that reports cargo. So we gotta find the victim. If we know who the victim is, if it's the carrier we hired, we recover the load back. We call law enforcement so they can do a recovery report, because obviously our case is, besides recovering the load and putting it back in the supply chain, is to get the bad actors so we can get them prosecuted. So we got to do everything by the step of the law, and we might have to testify depending if it goes to court or not. So we pick it up and we tell the carrier, hey, look, we found your load. Here are all the pallets. They do the inventory. Usually they take it back to the shipper, do their inventory count, see they're missing. But most of the times we even have investigators on the shipper to make sure that there's no funny business or pallet missing or not, because obviously we're trying to control the loss.
So, another question. So, let's say, are you seeing that people internally in some of these companies are setting up these fake loads, or this double brokering, or, like an internal guy, you know what I'm saying? Like a JB Hunt.
Right.
I don't want to use too many names, but JB Hunt, right?
JB Hunt's a great company, by the way, guys.
And
top 100 carriers.
But people within the JB Hunt organization, do you find them doing or spearheading this theft or whatever?
I will tell you that they're a very good carrier. Internally, we don't see a lot of stuff. You would think the brokers are involved. I think in the last 2 years, I've only had 3 or 4 brokers that one was obviously involved, and the others were kind of, they're in vulgar language, they're either idiots or they're just playing the part.
Wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah. So, I had one that I always like to bring it up when I do these classes. Is very simple. They call the guy, and, his name is Mohammed. And they're verifying his safer, big broker. We heard the conversation was being recorded. And they said, okay, well, what's your company name? Okay. What's your name? Mohammed. What's your email? He gives another email. He goes, are you sure that's your email? Because we have another one on file. No, but use this one. I'm an agent. Okay. What's your phone number? He gives another. Oh, but that's not the one on file. Oh, are you sure you're in the company? Yeah, I'm okay. What's your name? Mohammed. Okay. How you spell it? He hesitates. I'm like, oh.
Well, there's like 5 ways.
So I'm like, he still gives the loan. And I always go back to his broker and say, look, the number one flag there, besides he couldn't spell his name, which is a flag, it's he didn't negotiate the rate. If he's calling and it's $2,000 in the load board, and you're just giving him and he's not telling, hey, could I have $2,500? Could I have $3,000? He takes it for $2,000. That's a problem. That's a red flag. Don't give him the load. And that's what's happening. And then, that same guy, same dispatcher broker had 4 in a month. But we noticed that the pattern was that people had already figured him out, so we don't know he was involved, or we couldn't prove it he was involved, or he had just figured out that the guy at 4:30 he would give the house away because he was leaving at 5. So he just wanted to cover every single truck at 4:30. So that's what it was. So it's easier when we hear the phone conversations from these brokers, because They're really not.
Who's getting the prosecution? I mean, how's that going? Is it that they're not giving them enough time, and that's why people keep doing it? Because there's a big argument, like in the trucking world, that that they keep doing things that are causing them to.
Yeah, I'll tell you. It's very disappointing. I've been doing this for 25 years. The last 2 years, we haven't gone to court. I've only gone to court once in a federal case. I do a lot of federal cases. Years prior, there was more involvement.
But are they getting time, man? Like, that's the thing. People are like, hey, man, it's happening a lot because nobody's getting. They're getting
not
jail time.
prosecuting. I'll tell you this. So, 2 years ago, after you will call the FBI and they'll take a case if it need a nexus, meaning that it had to be out of the country or out of the state lines. It had to be it had bonded, a bunch of scenarios so it could meet the nexus. And they'll start doing it. It didn't have to have a value. It just needed to meet nexus. Now the FBI currently reduced their cargo theft task force. They had a bunch of agents. Now they have one agent and then a bunch of task force officers.
So it's like these guys know that. They're like, hey, man, let's just keep doing this.
And believe it or not, it's like now it's $1 million cap. And you're in the insurance business. You don't move $1 million every day. So it's very hard to do.
Usually when you're moving $1 million, it's usually cars.
Yeah.
Exotic cars. Right. Not even exotic cars, just a good truckload of cars.
So the other issue is Miami-Dade was also same. They had no limit. It was like 500. Now it's 750. The state attorney in Florida is not really prosecuting these things. They, I have a case that's been going on for 4 years. I get notice every day about a subpoena and it never goes through.
Wow, it's just so big.
So they're not prosecuting.
Yeah, it's just so big because that's the argument. Like, people keep double brokering because they're not getting punished. They're not getting punished, and then the people who steal and rob, it's,
well, I'll tell you this: if you're
that's good for you, right?
Yeah, it is. It's good for business. But I'll tell you, the rule of thumb is that if you're gonna steal something in Miami, and you have a clean record, you probably might get 6 months probation.
Wow. So I think some of these people know that. They know what's happening. They know that they're, Uncle Tommy over there, did something. He only got
I'll tell you this.
a year.
If I was a bad guy, I would go steal trucks all day long instead of going to a bank. I steal $1 at a bank, I get a federal prosecutor. You steal a truckload.
We are not telling anyone to do that, okay? But if that does happen, this is the guy you got to call so they can find it, okay? Any more questions for?
No, I think we covered a lot. I think we hit on some key points, on the amount of cargo was on my side of things. The amount of cargo, are we exceeding $100,000 on a truck? And
what I always suggest, Harold, for your carriers, and I know you're in the insurance business, obviously the policy has to be explained to them in layman terms. Yeah. Because they read in the proposal, they can't, it's very hard.
All they see that they have $100,000
right. And it's also a language issue. The way that all these policies are written by attorneys, so their wording is very difficult to understand. So I would always say that if they have a good agent, they need to break it down in the proposal what's covered or not. And what you're always looking for is unattended, unattached, and obviously recommend a dishonesty policy or a crime policy because you need it. That is key. If I would have a trucking company, those are the things that I would need. Obviously, you have your target commodities and your exclusions or limitations on the commodities, but it's always the same thing. You're carrying money's not covered. Is that carrying gold is not. Precious metals and all that stuff. It's standard. The only one that you gotta do if you're moving crawfish or shellfish, you get the endorsement. And if you're moving electronics,
make sure it's covered.
It's covered.
Yeah, that's another thing. They don't ask those questions, or the agent doesn't tell them, hey, by the way, you're not covered for electronics, just in case.
Yeah, I've had cases that they carry brinks, they carry pennies. They're moving them from the Federal Reserve to Miami, and you're like, you're not covered for that. Oh no, it's coins. I'm covered. It's currency. Well, currency is coins. Anything it's not covered. So if you lose that truckload of pennies, you're out of luck.
That's what it's. Yeah, that's about.
The only one that's getting tricky is copper, because copper is really not. If you really regulate, depending on what insurance company, precious metals could fall into the copper. But a lot of people just say, no, it's copper. Wow. So
that's crazy, man.
So copper is one thing, pennies are another thing.
That's crazy. Well, guys, if anything ever like that happens to you, here's Rolando, who can help you with the recovery of theft. And if you have any questions on how it impacts the insurance or what kind of insurances you need, the proper insurance policy, Harold's your guy. We'll leave some links down there so you can connect with Harold. You can connect with Rolando. Any questions, comments, any experiences, please share that below. Comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And thanks for tuning in to another great episode of Truth in Trucking.
Have a good day.
Take care.
Well, that's a big 10-4.